Hey everybody. So here's what's funny. I'm downstairs in my studio. You can see the mural behind all this mess over here. But yeah, I'm here in my studio. I'm working on the pieces for my upcoming show. I have the first 20 done, the first phase, and I'm working on the second phase. So second phase involves collage and paint. So I am sitting here cutting out today some letters that are going on a piece that I'm working on. I think it might be the last one I have to do any words on, because words are the toughest, because obviously you want them to read, but you also, I don't want it to take over the piece, but at the same time you want it to have a little bit of a graphic. So I am now working on cutting out paper, up on paper, up on paper, up on paper, up on paper. It seems like that's kind of funny because, one of the reasons that I started, one of the reasons I went into graphic design instead of education, which was where my heart was lying in the beginning, because I had some wonderful art teachers along the way. Well, I had wonderful teachers who fostered my art talent first. Let me start there. Everybody from my first grade teacher, Miss Gillespie, Evelyn Gillespie at HIghland Elementary. And then we move forward to probably about fourth grade, and that's when Judy Friel, who's now Ramashow, I can't remember Judy. Don't kill me, Judy. I butchered your all's last name. I'm sorry. She fostered my creativity, and then I would say the biggest influence in my elementary years was Jean Whiteside, who was my fifth grade teacher. Jean really saw in me a little talent, and she fostered that. She gave me attention for my talent. I would often do, and I think it's probably because she didn't like doing the bulletin boards. You remember how in like the cafeteria, if you went to Callahan, you remember there was the big one in the cafeteria at the front door, and then there was of course the smaller one in the library, and then usually back in the day, our fifth grade class, we were in the new building that had like the gym and the choir room and all that fun stuff, music room. So we were upstairs. It was one of those rooms that was like a 2-room situation. There was no wall in between. So it was like both fifth grades were in the same space. So you could kind of hear what's going on over there, and you had to concentrate. It was really interesting. I think we were the first class to be in that room too, I think. But anyway, and there were bulletin boards in there. And I think Jean just didn't like doing bulletin boards. So when she found somebody who loved doing it, she let me do it. And Pat Pleasant was the same way with her bulletin board in the entrance to the library there. So that's where it all started. And then I got to high school, and at the time, Bonnie Hodges, now Bonnie Keyser, she really fostered my talents as well. I think sometimes I probably pushed her buttons. Not probably, I know I did. I'm sure Bonnie will tell you. I wasn't the worst student, but I wasn't the easiest student, because I was always wanting to do something grander and bigger and more, which is kind of funny because a lot of my work now tends to be large. Like the mural behind me that is spanning that green space that you see there and over there and a little bit over my shoulder. That's probably a good 40 feet, maybe, if not more. And it's probably 9 feet maybe tall. I love working large. So it's kind of a departure for me on some of these pieces, like the first phase, to work small, but I'll get back to that in a minute. But then I had Bonnie, and Bonnie really stuck by me. I had Miss Humphreys for one class, one time, and then that was it. I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. I want Bonnie as my teacher. And so Bonnie really fostered my talents and pushed me to grow, and we get to learn so many different things. We had drawing and we had painting in that class. We did paper mache, we did leather arts, we did pottery, we did everything. And it was wonderful to have that experience, to be able to jump off of, to say, where do I want to go? And it was through those teachers And then when I get to college, I had more teachers who influenced me. You know, in my graphics and drawing area, that would be Amy Oliver. Amy was my life drawing instructor, and she loved the fact that I wanted to work larger because everybody else wanted to work on these little pads, you know, about this size. And I was like, I want a big piece of paper. And I remember the day she brought in, God, it was massive. It was this huge piece of paper. And it was probably, God, 4 feet tall or so. And I ripped off a piece that was like 4 foot by 8 foot. I was wanting big. And we had 2 models. One was named Diane, and I can't remember the other girl's name, but they were besties. And so I did a drawing of them. It was like, I think it was charcoal and Conte, maybe pastel. I don't remember, but it was in black and white on like a gray paper. It was a pretty gray paper. God, it was so pretty. And so I hung that up in my house. It was in my house for a very long time, until I moved a few times and it got damaged and I probably threw it away. But Amy kind of fostered that, and she also worked with me within the graphics. And then Roger Sayer popped in because Amy went on sabbatical, so they had Roger come in and teach. So those two had an influence on me. I will say probably the person in my college career that had the most influence on me was Mr. Springer, Homer Springer. When Homer liked you, he liked you. If he didn't like you, it could be a little rough. He saw through the bullshit. And he knew the kids who were there to learn and the kids who were there just to get the credit so they could pass, you know, and get out of college. So he really stood behind me and really pushed me, and also really allowed me to kind of figure out what I was doing, how I was doing, and everything. Yeah, it was a really. He was one of the people. It was a very pivotal moment because I could go into his office and talk, and know it stayed right with him. If I said, "Hey, just don't share this," it wouldn't get shared. So having those people there, that's why I wanted to go into education. And I'm sitting there telling all this story just because I'm cutting paper. Lord, maybe I shouldn't have gone into education. These kids would be like, what the hell? But what happened was I was going to go into education because of these wonderful educators that I had along the way. And it was kind of funny because as I was going along, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be an educator and have to do paper and scissors and glue. Guess what I'm doing? Paper, scissors, and glue. Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. So anyway, sorry for the long drawn out video there, but I wanted to share that because it was part of the story, part of the journey of the show. So the second half is going to be paint, paper, collage. So they'll be varying sizes. The largest is a 3 foot by 4 foot. I have 2 that are going to be 3 that are 24 by 30s, and or 30 or 36, 30 or 36, 24 by 30, 36, something like that. And then the rest of them are going to be smaller scale, however many I finish with this second set. So, and the great part about it is, and I'm not really shared this with many people, is that some of the pieces that I'm doing in collage, I've also done in the other style in phase 1, which was gouache and marker. So not only am I going to have the gouache and marker visuals, you're going to see a more graphic presentation with collage and paint. So it's going to be so exciting. I can't wait to share it with everybody. September's right around the corner. I've got to get to work. So I'm going to shut up now and get back to cutting paper. And I'll see you guys soon. So, I want to talk a little bit more about the items in the show, the first half and the second half. So, the first half of the show, like I said, is going to be gouache and pen. I'm just using the simple if I could hold on to it. I'm using a simple Sharpie marker. That's it. I'm using a Sharpie marker and gouache. I discovered gouache. Let me back up a little bit. Back in 2020, was it March, April, somewhere around there, of 2020, I was looking for some challenges, because obviously the world was being challenged because COVID had just reared its ugly head. And of course, you know, I was furloughed from my job. I'd started dropping my weight. So I was ready for changes. I was craving changes. I wanted to do something that would make me step out of my comfort zone and push. And so 2020 was the year I decided to do that. Hey. And so what I did was I signed up for an art journal class through Viz Arts in Richmond, Virginia. The professor was Amy Oliver, who was my graphics and life drawing instructor when I was at Longwood in Farmville, Virginia. So I knew her teaching style, I knew her methods. So there was something comfortable about the class, because at least I knew somebody, you know. And I started that class, and I remember my first journal, and I remember sitting there looking at this journal of a gazillion pages. That's what it felt like, a gazillion. And I literally had a meltdown. A freaking meltdown. I mean, I lost my shit, people. I was freaking out. I was scared. I was so caught up in what I thought it needed to be and what I had to show. And it really threw me into a tailspin. And when I say threw me, I mean it really threw me into a tailspin. I was a freaking basket case. And I remember we were upstairs, and I was sitting at the table where I have my computer usually, and in the TV room. And I was just sitting there, and I'm like, I can't do this. What have I done? I signed up for something. I've paid this money. I got to do this, but I can't. I was so freaking scared, because I am not, and still to this day, really, aren't a journaler in a way of let me do some sketches and write about the experience or whatever. That's just not how I work. I tend to photograph, so I have more of a visual journal that way, as opposed to a written, sketched kind of journal. So I photograph, like my phone is full of photos, like most people's phones. I think I've got like over maybe 11, 12,000 pictures in my phone. That doesn't count all the ones I've already downloaded. But that's how I worked. So I was literally having a freaking meltdown. And I think, yeah, hold on, let me scoot back here a second. So I keep all my journals down here with me in this room. And I think, yep, journal number 1, here it is. This is my very first journal that I started back in 2020. You can see I didn't fill it all the way up. You could see where the journaling stopped, because that meant that actually what happened was I got to that into that class and I stopped. So I wanted a clean new journal, so I have the other ones there, but it literally stops right there. So I still have that many pages in this guy I could fill up. But I remember I wanted this journal to be about my tree in Maui and the influence it had on me. And I think that was a good thing and it was a bad thing, because what it did was it set me up in my head that it had to be this grand, wonderful thing that was like, ball, and it really didn't need to be. I was too worried about this being a bunch of finished work as opposed to a journey of work. And so I literally, this was because I remember Renee looked at me and he said, all you got to do is put some marks on a page. And And I remember just snapping back. I'm like, it's not about a bunch of fucking marks. I've got to get this right. And he just kind of looked at me and goes, no, you don't. I'm like, yes, I do. You don't understand. And it was all self-imposed crap on me. That's all it was. I was the one who said it had to be this. I was the one who was saying it had to be perfect. I was the one. You get it? Me. It was all me. And I remember putting these marks down, and I'd already glued my business card, because that's my business card right there. I'd already glued my business card in here, and I just started putting some marks on the page. And it did help some. And then I started gluing stuff in, and making it something more than what it was. This is actually a drawing by Mr. Springer that was in a retrospective of his work, I think. This was me out from under our tree in the backyard. So I started doing things like this. So it started to change a little bit. And you'll start to see where like this was more about a family tree. This is my 11th great grandmother. That's the Countess of Argyll. Agnes Douglas is her name. And this actually is hanging in the Museum of Scotland, I think, in Edinburgh. Anyway, the National Museum. So I just started really branching out and playing. And so you can see this is actually gouache, and this is where the story started. This is when I discovered gouache, and I'd never worked with gouache before. Amy had brought it up in the class and everything, but I got some gouache and I fell in love with gouache. I love the chalkiness of it and how you can, like, for instance, this is actually color pencil over gouache. It's just so pretty and just wonderful. It's so much. And you can put marker over it like this. It'll go on all kinds of paper. Like this paper is like a mulberry paper, so it took to the mulberry as well as this paper. It's just a lot of fun, and you can really push gouache a lot. So I really started to branch out. You can see I did a bunch of there were a bunch of pieces I did that were like circles with leaves. This is actually some cut paper that I even gouached over top of that. So I fell in love with gouache and marker. And so that was the first, my first comfort zone that I decided with this show, I wanted to do gouache and marker pieces. So there are 20 pieces in that part of the phase of the show. I'm not quite sure how I'm hanging this show yet in regards to whether they will be two different visuals of the same place beside each other, or one side will be one way and one side will be the other, which is kind of where I'm leaning. So I'm excited about that. I'm really excited to present some places and visuals that are the same but different. Because my goal here is to show how an artist does not have to stick to one style. An artist does not have to say, I am a portrait painter, or I am a landscape artist. I am this or I am that. You can be all of those things. You don't have to be one thing. Like, I'm not a mural painter. I'm not a muralist. I am not necessarily, anything other than I'm an artist. And as an artist, I can create anything in any way I want. I get to control that. That's when I get to play and be just the process. I was watching a video yesterday on YouTube. There was this guy, I think his name is Tim Schofield, I think was his name, and I think he's British. And he said there is this wonderful moment when you're creating art, when you step away from thinking it has to be something and actually enjoy the process and live in the process. And then you become one of the tools of the creation. And that really hit me yesterday, because I realized that oftentimes, like with my graphics, for instance, I have an end goal, because I work for a furniture company, and like our end goal obviously to sell furniture. So I have to present in a very clear, concise way. Here's what it is. Here's what it can do. Yada, yada, yada. And in a way, art is that way too. But I get caught up in that sometimes. And what happens is I feel like my art has to be a certain thing. It has to look a certain way because I want it to make sure that everybody knows what it is and everybody understands it. Now, sometimes I can get a little wackadoo and I'll do something more abstract, which I absolutely adore too. Abstract scares the shit out of me. It absolutely scares the shit out of me. I'm gonna say it, it's my video. Scares the shit out of me. I discovered a new artist also as well. God, what is her name? Judith something. I'll have to think on that one a minute, but it's Judith something, and my water bottle is telling me to drink time. But Judith, she was popular back with de Kooning and Pollock, but didn't get any credit, of course, because she was a woman. She has a vagina, so she didn't get any credit. She has to have a penis. So this Judith lady, I mean, her work is stunning, and it has really inspired me to want to play in abstract land. So I have a feeling that once I get done with the work I'm doing for the show, I have a feeling there's going to be a vast amount of work that might not even be representational at all. But I digress because I'm babbling and I haven't finished my story. So the first set of work is marker and gouache. The show is surrounding itself in the theme of the Allegheny Highlands. It's where I grew up, in the mountains of Southwest Virginia. I grew up in a little area called Callahan. It's about 10 to 12 miles from the Virginia-West Virginia border, right off of I-64. So that's where I grew up. And it's funny, I go home, and I still call it home, although I call High Point home now as well. I go home, and I do appreciate the area more. It is a beautiful area. I mean, it's like all areas, it has its moments, but it's a beautiful area up in the mountains. I'm glad I got to grow up there. It wasn't exactly easy for a kid like me to grow up there. But it's been much easier for a kid like me to go back, all grown up, and realize that nobody really gave a fuck, to be quite honest. Kids are going to be kids. They're going to be mean as hell no matter what. That's kids. Because they're scared too. And they're just lashing out because they're scared, so they lash out at the one who they think is below them. And oftentimes that was me and my friends. But going back and looking at the Highlands, there was so much about that area that I wanted to lift up and show, even if it's through rose-colored glasses, I don't care. So that's phase one of the show. Is more, the pieces are more about showing the Highlands, and I'll show a couple of the pieces here in the video that have not been seen yet. Yes, you're getting a first-hand, so stuff like this. This is the Firmstone Mansion. Let me see if I can get it to be. So this is the Firmstone Mansion. It's out in the Longdale Furnace area. Just fun, simple, and like I said, these are smaller. They're like a 12 by 16. Yeah, 12 by 16. So there's the Firmstone Mansion. Let's see what else do I want to show. Okay, I'll show this one. This is Milton Hall. It's near my mom and dad's out in Callahan. And my friend David Wiley, when I was little, David Wiley and his family lived here. It's a beautiful home. And let's see, I'll show one more. Yeah, I'll show this one. This is the Masonic Theater in Clifton Forge. I had a lot of fun doing that one. This one was tough, but I did it. Yay! And there's more, but I'm not going to show you those. So that gives you an idea of what the first part of the show looks like. And here in a second, we'll talk more about the second half of the show. But right now, I need to cut some more paper. Okay, so I want to talk about the second half of the show now. The second half of the show, let me cut, why am I doing that? I'm cutting and talking at the same time. I really should just be talking. But let me cut this O out here real quick. The second half of the show consists of the collage and paintwork. And so I originally had this grand, wonderful idea that I was going to create these pieces completely out of paper and imagery of the Highlands. And I wanted it every single one of them to be created just with paper that, you know, was either textures or photos or something from the Highlands. I just really wanted to do that. And so yours truly started to really work on that concept. And that concept sucked ass. It was awful. The photos were too busy, so making something out of a bunch of photos, you couldn't, it was just like, you were looking at the photos as opposed to what it was creating, and it was just a lot, and it was just a mess. It was an absolute mess. And then I thought, okay, well, why don't I just paint them? And so I thought, well, I'm really kind of painting them already with the gouache and marker. And I really wanted them to be very much this. I didn't want them to be so close that they could be bed buddies. I wanted them to be like next door neighbors, you know, in a different apartment complex or, you know, on your street. I did not want them to be that similar. I just didn't. I hated the idea. And so for an entire month, I lost a month's worth of time to work. Now, granted, keep in mind, you know, I do have a day job, and I also have my coaching job with my clients. So, you know, I do have some times where I could have been working, but I was busy doing other things that I had to do, like work, the other work. So I lost a month of time sitting there working. I did three different starts, I guess is a good way to put it. And it sucked. It was awful, absolutely terrible. And to the point where, here we go again, I was, Renee and I were driving home to visit mom and dad for something. I don't remember what it was. Was it Mother's Day? Yeah, it was Mother's Day. I drove up to Mother's Day because I went home and made mom dinner. So we're driving up through there, and I said, I'm really not happy with how the show's going at all. I'm disappointed in myself right now. I'm not happy. I think this is not going to happen the way I need it to happen. And he had seen me down here struggling, so he already knew this was a topic of very gentle persuasion and conversation, because he knew one wrong word and I was off. I tried to do things that were a little different in regards to, I was going to put it on a cotton paper and collage elements to make it feel like the place. So for instance, I started one based on green pastures, which is what Longdale Furnace used to be called back before it was Longdale Furnace. It was called Green Pastures. And it was primarily a place for African Americans to have a place to go and swim and have a picnic and enjoy the outdoors, separate from the white folks area. So I was working on something with that, and I came up with this idea of creating things, and like Milton Hall, for instance, I was also working on that one kind of side by side, creating a collage that was not necessarily painted, but had some paint elements, but it was a collage with elements that made me feel like that place. So like for Milton Hall, I had the guy who originally built the Viscount Milton, I think his last name was Milton, Viscount Milton, who built the building. his wife Laura, and I put in some papers that I felt like had that feel of their wallpaper. And like Green Pastures, I had the sign that's there now saying this is why it's called Green Pastures. And obviously I put some green on the paper because that area is so lush. No. So I've already tried collaging something out of a bunch of pictures. I've tried painting it separately, and I've even tried giving you the essence of the place. Failure City. And why am I telling you this? Because the first half was so easy. The first half was just making sure I got all the shit done, to be really blunt. I had to get the shit done. That was all I had to worry about. I didn't have to worry about, can I do this? Because I knew how to do this. I knew how to do gouache and marker. I knew. As a matter of fact, let me see. Is it this one? Nope, not that one. There's one here somewhere. Of course, I can't find it right now because I'm looking for it. But, oh, there it is. Okay. So I already knew I could do gouache and marker. Because see, I've done stuff like this. This is when I went to Savannah. This is on Bull Street. Another one from Bull Street. So this is marker and gouache. And I actually did these. One of my favorite ones, obviously, is this one, which is the house on Monterey Square, the Mercer Williams house. It's where the murder happened in the Midnight Garden Evil. And I also did one of Natural Bridge. So I knew how to do gouache and marker. I didn't have to think about it. So remember we were talking about earlier in the video about being challenged? So this is why I did this. One, I wanted to do a show because I knew I needed to do it. I needed to challenge myself. I also wanted to show back home because I haven't shown there since 1987 when I left. That was in high school, and I haven't shown anything since then. And back then I was doing these things called graffiti art, and it was just like everything thrown at a piece of paper. It was like, it's kind of like my wall here in the studio, which you can't see. It's just like everything's there, and it's a collage and cacophony of things and visuals, and that's how I used to work, except I drew a bunch of it and then pasted things on. So, which is interesting that I just had this epiphany that I actually did collage way back when, and I'm now returning back to it in a weird way. Okay, that blew my mind. Wow, that's... So I'm returning back to do this show. And so what happened was, sorry, that just blew my mind. Yeah. So I am building these visuals now. What I did was I really wanted to break them down to just an essence. And there's some pieces you're only going to see once. For instance, there's some pieces in those 12x16 gouache marker. You're not going to see them in collage form. And there's some things that are in collage form that you won't see in the 12x16 gouache marker pieces. I wanted to play. Especially when I started the collage pieces, like for instance, there's one of the Clifton Forge School of the Arts, which is where the show is going to be. Opening September 2nd. There's a piece there that I did of the School of the Arts, and it is the front of the building. The second piece I'm doing for collage is also at the Clifton Forge School of the Arts, but it's not the front of the building. I'm not going to tell you where it is or what it is, but it's not the front of the building. So I wanted to really push. So by doing this collage paint, what happened was when I took it to the essence of each piece or each place, suddenly I thought, wait a minute, because remember I was talking about the essence when I was doing one of the cotton paper and was putting like, here's, Milton Holland that does this, this, and this. That started me down the road of giving me the freedom to loosen up. I have an influence in my art style sometimes. I have quite a few influences, but like obviously I'm a Warhol boy. Wasn't a long time ago, which is a shock to a lot of people. I was not a big Warhol fan, but love his work. So Warhol, Keith Haring, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Frida Kahlo, that lady that I can't think of her name that I just discovered. I love her work. I'm also influenced by people like Alice Neal. I love that when she does that white, big ass white canvas and just draws with that lovely cobalt blue with her brush. And her people are all kind of distorted. I gotta work on my distorting people because it makes me uncomfortable sometimes. I feel like I have to have it exactly right. But there's that wonderful distortion and that white canvas. And that's where you're gonna see the influence of Alice on the collage pieces, is that there's a lot of white canvas on some of them. Some of them are a little more covered, but there's a lot of white. And I broke it down into the simplest items. So you get this very simple, clean, streamlined visual. Where does that come from? My graphics, you got it. So what happened was I created visuals, which I will show you a few visuals here in a moment, and I'll show you what they look like as well finished. I'll show you the visuals. I actually went into a computer design program that I have called Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator. I put the photo of the item in there and I pulled out the items that I felt were important, and I broke these places down into their simplest shapes. So I gave it a language without smacking you in the face with it and saying, here's what it is, look at it, which is kind of what these are, but they're still subtle, but it's not. These are going to be bigger, so I need them to be a little more subtle. I can't wait to show these pieces. I really can't. I'm super excited about the show. I'm super nervous about the show. Like I said, it's the first time I've been home to show work. Friends, family, former teachers, they're all gonna be there. So it's like, but I can do it. I know I can, but this is part of that challenge thing that I was telling you about. I needed to challenge myself this year. And so by getting this show, I have a challenge and I'm working at it. And I love it. I want to do more shows. And I want to do more shows of work that I haven't created yet. And what I mean by that is I don't want to be pulling pieces off the wall and taking them down to the local place and saying, here's our new show. You know, I want to create a bunch of new pieces and take them. So you may find that there'll be even more boring videos than this one talking about shows. But I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to get back to cutting some paper, and I'm going to show you some visuals of here in just a second of here's what here. I'll show you. I'll do even better. I'll show you the picture that I used as my go-by. I will show you the computer piece that I did, and then I'm going to show you what I've created from that computer piece. So I'm kind of excited about that. There may be only about a couple, but they're coming along. So thank you so much for listening. I'm going to shut up. I won't be talking again. You'll just get to see visuals. So thank you so much for watching, listening, supporting. I hope to see you guys. Show open. It's in Clifton Forge, Virginia at the Clifton Forge School of the Arts. It opens on September 2nd. That's the night of Meet the Artist. That reception is from 6 to 8 p.m. on Friday the 2nd. On Saturday, I'll be doing 2 workshops, one in the morning from 10 to 12, and that'll be for young folks. And then I'll have a break, and then from 2 to 4, I'll be doing an adult workshop for folks that are older than younger, from 2 to 4. And then on Sunday, obviously, they are closed, and I'm going to be celebrating my mama's birthday on the 4th. So I hope everybody has a great time. I hope to see everybody at the show. The show will be up through the end of October, by the way. It opens on that Friday and is there through the end of October. The pieces will be for sale. So yeah, so I don't know what my thing they're doing is like, hey. It was loving some music, I guess. So thank you, everybody. See you soon.